All right, buckle up, everybody. We're going deep today, like way deep, into Sanatana Dharma. I've been wanting to really get into this concept for a while now, and I know a lot of you out there have too.
It's one of those things, isn't it? Always in the back of your mind.
Exactly. So, to guide us on this journey, we're going to turn to the Bhagavad Gita, kind of a big deal in Hinduism.
Yeah, you could say that. It's a foundational text for sure.
It's more than just a book, though. It's a conversation. Okay, picture this. You're on a battlefield. Kurukshetra, to be precise. Armies are about to clash. There's tension everywhere.
I'm already stressed just thinking about it.
Right. But right in the middle of this craziness, you've got Arjuna. He's a warrior, and he's having a heart-to-heart with his charioteer, Krishna.
Seems like a bad time for a chat, don't you think? With all the, impending war and all.
You'd think so, right? But hold on, there's a twist. Krishna isn't just any charioteer. He's an avatar of God.
Talk about divine intervention.
No kidding. So that's the setup for the Bhagavad Gita, this incredible dialogue where, among other things, this idea of Sanatana Dharma takes center stage.
It's a core concept for sure, and a complex one.
That's why we're here, to unpack it all, figure out what it actually means, and, see if we can make it relevant to our lives today, beyond, ancient battlefields and all that.
Because, believe it or not, it is surprisingly relevant.
You think so?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
See, Sanatana Dharma is often translated as eternal religion. But honestly, that doesn't quite capture it. And I know it can sound a bit intimidating.
Eternal religion. Yeah, that's a lot to process.
It is. It's much more profound than just a set of rules or beliefs. Think of it more like the inherent nature of things. You know, how water is liquid, fire is hot.
Okay, I'm with you.
Those are unchanging properties, right?
Yeah.
Well, Sanatana Dharma points to that same idea, but for existence itself. It's about those eternal, unchanging principles that govern, well, everything.
So instead of asking, what religion should I follow, it's more about understanding these, fundamental laws of reality.
Precisely. And understanding those laws, well, it can help you understand yourself better, your place in the whole grand scheme of things.
I like that, like a personal instruction manual for life, almost.
You got it.
All right, I'm starting to see why you find this so fascinating. But before we get too deep into all that, can we go back to that battlefield for a second? I mean, the Gita doesn't hold back on the drama, does it?
Not at all. It's a pretty intense scene. You've got Bhishma, this respected elder, blowing his conch shell to rally the troops.
Yeah, I read that part. The text describes it as a lion's roar.
Powerful imagery, right? And then on the other side, you have Arjuna. He sees his own family lined up against him, ready to fight, and he completely freaks out.
An epic meltdown, huh?
Pretty much. Talk about an internal crisis.
It makes you think, though. Don't we all have our own internal battlefields in a way? Those moments where you're torn between what you want and what you should do?
All the time. It's the human condition. And that's exactly what the Gita is exploring. This clash between duty and desire, right and wrong. It's all playing out within us.
So this internal struggle, that's the setup for Krishna's teachings.
Exactly. He steps in as this incredible guide for Arjuna. And for us, too, through the Gita, helping us navigate those battles within.
So it's more than just, ancient philosophy. It's a practical guide.
Absolutely. And that's what we'll be exploring, how this idea of Sanatana Dharma, as is revealed in the Gita, can actually help us today with the challenges we face, the choices we make.
I'm intrigued. But before we really get into the nitty-gritty, can we go back to something you mentioned earlier? This whole idea of Sanatana Dharma not actually being a religion? I mean, the Gita makes a distinction there, right?
It does. It actually says religion conveys the idea of faith, and faith may change. But Sanatana Dharma refers to that activity which cannot be changed.
So while religions might have different, beliefs and practices and all that, Sanatana Dharma is more like the underlying current that connects them.
That's a fantastic way to put it. It's like those universal principles that hold true no matter what you believe or where you come from. And it's not just about believing it either. The Gita says you have to live it.
So it's more about how you act in the world, not just what you think.
Precisely. And that's what makes the Gita's teachings so fascinating. They're applicable to everyone, regardless of background.
Now I'm really starting to see how this can get interesting, even for someone who's not, a scholar of ancient texts.
Oh, you'll be surprised at how much wisdom is packed in there.
Yeah.
And how much it can actually speak to your own experiences.
All right, I'm hooked. But hey, before we move on, can we just acknowledge that battlefield setting one more time? I have to admit, it's kind of got me on the edge of my seat.
Well, then you're in for a ride, because things are about to get even more intense. We're about to see how Arjuna's inner struggle really unfolds, and how Krishna's guidance, well, it leads him and us toward a deeper understanding of Sanatana Dharma.
Okay, so we've got this epic backdrop, right? All this tension and drama, but where do the actual teachings come in? Where's the Sanatana Dharma in all this?
Well, the Gita doesn't just describe the problem. It offers solutions, practical wisdom that, believe it or not, we can actually apply to our lives today.
So it's not all doom and gloom on the battlefield. There's hope for us regular folk, too.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, one of the core principles of Sanatana Dharma, at least as it's presented in the Gita, is this idea of detachment. Detachment from the fruits of our actions. It's called karma yoga.
Detachment. Wait, you mean like not caring about the results? That doesn't seem very practical, does it?
It might seem counterintuitive at first, but think about it.
Yeah.
Let's say you're working on a project, something you're really passionate about. The Gita's idea of detachment would be like, focus on doing your absolute best, learning and growing through the process, but don't get too hung up on the outcome, whether it's a promotion or recognition or whatever.
So it's more about the journey, not the destination.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Honestly, that can be so freeing. It lets you act with more clarity and purpose, without all the baggage of expectations and anxiety about results. The Gita says it beautifully. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action.
Letting go of that need to control everything, right? Accepting that we can't always dictate the outcome. I can see how that could be liberating.
It is. It leads to a much more peaceful way of being.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. Detachment. So what other wisdom does the Gita have up its sleeve?
Well, another big one that really speaks to me is self-control. Mastering your senses, your desires.
Oh, that's a tough one. Especially these days, it feels like we're constantly surrounded by temptations. How can you even begin to cultivate self-control in this kind of environment?
You're telling me.
Yeah.
The Gita recognizes that. In fact, it even calls lust an insatiable enemy that lives within us. But it doesn't just leave us hanging. There's a path.
Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me more about this path.
It's not about, suppressing your desires entirely. It's more about learning to channel them, direct them towards something higher, something more meaningful.
So it's not saying give up everything you enjoy. It's more about like being mindful of those desires, not letting them run the show.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that real happiness, lasting happiness, it doesn't come from just chasing those fleeting gratifications. It comes from aligning your desires with your higher purpose.
Okay, I see what you mean, but how do you actually do that?
Well, think of it this way. If you're driving a car and you never take your foot off the accelerator, you're going to crash, right?
Eventually.
Self-control is like applying the brakes when you need to. So you can navigate life's journey with more skill, more awareness.
That's a great analogy. Finding that balance between enjoying life and, not letting those desires completely take over.
Precisely. Being the driver, not the passenger.
It's actually kind of comforting to know that even Arjuna, this warrior, this hero, he struggles with these things too.
Oh, absolutely. Throughout the Gita, we see him questioning, doubting, even despairing. He's clearly a capable guy, but even he needs guidance.
And that's where Krishna comes in, as the teacher, the mentor.
Exactly. And it highlights something so important, something the Gita really emphasizes. We need teachers. We need guides on this path of self-discovery.
It's true. It's like even if you have the map, it helps to have someone who's been there before, someone to point you in the right direction.
You got it. The Gita is a reminder that we don't have to figure everything out alone.
That's reassuring. So who can be considered a teacher in this context?
It could be anyone who embodies those principles, of Sanatana Dharma. Someone who inspires you to live more consciously. A spiritual teacher, a mentor, even just someone you admire for their wisdom.
Actually, that makes me think of something. Lately, I've been thinking a lot about where I'm finding fulfillment in life. And it brings me to that image from the Gita, the tree of material existence.
Oh, yes. One of the most powerful metaphors.
Can you remind me what that image signifies? It's been a while.
The Gita describes this tree with its roots growing upward and its branches spreading downward. It's this idea that so often we're seeking fulfillment in all the wrong places.
Oh, I remember now. Like we're clinging to the branches, to all the material things, when we should be focused on the roots.
Precisely. The roots symbolize our connection to the divine, to the source of true happiness.
So it's like we're looking for happiness in stuff, in achievements, relationships, when true fulfillment comes from connecting to something, something deeper within.
Exactly. The tree of material existence is a powerful reminder that we need to shift our focus from the temporary to the eternal.
It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day, chasing things, stressing about things. We forget to nurture that inner connection.
It's a common trap, and the Gita, well, it offers a way out.
So, okay, we're seeing how Sana Dharma can help us navigate this material world. But the Gita also talks to something beyond all this, right? This whole cycle of birth and death.
Yes. The Gita describes this continuous cycle. We come into this world, we experience joy, we experience sorrow, and then we leave it all behind, only to start all over again.
That can feel kind of heavy. Like, are we just stuck in this endless loop?
Well, the Gita says there's a way out, and that's where the path of devotion, bhakti yoga, comes in.
Bhakti yoga, this is where things start to get a little more mystical, right?
I guess you could say that. Bhakti yoga is about cultivating love and surrender to the Supreme.
So not just blindly following rules and rituals.
Not at all. It's about a conscious choice to direct your love, your devotion, towards something higher.
Okay, and who or what is this higher power we're talking about?
Well, throughout the Gita, Krishna is revealed as more than just a teacher, more than just a charioteer. He is the supreme Godhead himself.
Whoa. So we've gone from charioteer to divine being. That's quite the upgrade.
It is, and it reflects the journey that Arjuna and really we as readers go through. We start by seeing Krishna as a guide. But as we delve deeper, we start to perceive him and the divine in a much bigger, much grander way.
And this all culminates in that incredible vision, right? Where Arjuna sees Krishna's universal form, all these beings and worlds contained within him. That part always gets me.
It's a mind-blowing image. And it's not just a spectacle, it's a revelation, showing us the interconnectedness of everything, the understanding that everything comes from the divine and ultimately returns to it.
Wow, okay. I need a minute to process all that. So we're all connected, all part of this, like, cosmic dance.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
And recognizing that connection, well, it liberates us, frees us from those limitations of seeing ourselves as separate, as just individuals. It allows us to see ourselves as part of something so much bigger.
This is all pretty heavy stuff, but it's also really inspiring.
It is. And you're doing a great job of keeping up.
Well, I'm trying, but, the Gita was written thousands of years ago. How can these teachings be relevant to our lives today? We're not warriors facing epic battles, are we?
That's a great question. And you're right, the context is different. But, the fundamental challenges of being human, those haven't really changed. We all still struggle with questions of purpose, of meaning, of happiness. We all face internal conflicts. And the Gita, well, it offers timeless wisdom on how to navigate those universal human experiences.
So it's like a universal toolkit for life.
Exactly. For example, remember that principle of detachment. It can be so helpful when you're dealing with all the stress and anxieties of modern life.
Right, not getting so worked up over things I can't control.
You got it. And what about self-control? That's even more relevant today, with all the distractions, all the temptations that are constantly thrown at us. The Gita reminds us that true happiness, it doesn't come from external gratification, but from cultivating inner peace, from mastering ourselves.
And bhakti yoga, this idea of cultivating love and devotion, could that help us feel more connected, more purposeful in a world that often feels, well, kind of meaningless?
Absolutely. It transcends religion. It transcends culture. It's a universal message of love, self-transcendence, connection to something bigger than ourselves.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. I feel like we've covered so much, but we're still just scratching the surface.
It's true. The Gita is a deep well of wisdom and inspiration. Every time you revisit it, you discover new layers of meaning, new insights to guide you.
What strikes me is that Sanatana Dharma, as we've been talking about it, isn't this rigid set of rules. It's more like a journey of self-discovery.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's about uncovering our true nature, our eternal connection to the divine, and then, living in alignment with that understanding.
And that journey, as the Gita shows us, can be tough, full of battles, full of choices.
Absolutely.
Right.
But it also reminds us that we're not alone. We have these teachings, we have the support of spiritual community, and most importantly, the grace of the divine.
And speaking of the divine, I'm curious about all the different paths to self-realization that the Gita talks about. We've touched on karma yoga, bhakti yoga, but there are others, right?
You're right. The Gita actually describes several yogic paths, each with a different approach to achieving liberation. There's Sana Yoga, the path of knowledge, Raja Yoga, the path of meditation, and even Hatha Yoga, which focuses on the physical practices.
So it's not about finding the one right path. It's about finding the path that resonates with you.
Exactly. And ultimately, all these paths, if practiced sincerely, they can lead to the same place, to self-realization, liberation from that cycle of birth and death we talked about.
Now, I have to admit, this whole idea of Krishna's universal form, it's mind-blowing, but it's also kind of overwhelming. I mean, how can we, as, regular people, even grasp the vastness of the divine?
It's a natural feeling. The divine can feel so incomprehensible. But the Gita offers a way to approach it. It's not about trying to, intellectually understand something that's beyond our limited minds. It's about cultivating a sense of awe, of reverence, of surrender.
So it's more about opening our hearts to the mystery, not trying to define it.
You said it perfectly, and the Gita encourages us to do that, to cultivate that openness, that reverence, through practices like chanting, meditation, studying sacred texts.
But what about those of us who aren't necessarily drawn to traditional religious practices? Is there a way to connect with the teachings of the Gita without, subscribing to a specific belief system?
Absolutely. That's the beauty of it. The teachings are universal. They speak to the human experience, the challenges we face, the aspirations we have, no matter what you believe or where you come from.
It's like those principles of nonviolence, compassion, self-control, the pursuit of knowledge. They're not exclusive to any one religion. They're just, ethical principles, guides for living a meaningful life.
Exactly. You can approach the Gita as a source of ethical guidance, as a roadmap for navigating the complexities of life, even if you don't necessarily buy into the whole theological framework.
So in a way, Sanatana Dharma isn't something you believe in, it's something you live, something you embody through your actions.
That's beautifully put. It's about aligning your life with those eternal principles that are at the heart of your being.
This has been such an insightful conversation. I feel like we've only scratched the surface of the Gita's wisdom.
It's true. It's an endless source of knowledge and inspiration. Each time you return to it, you discover new layers of meaning, new insights.
I especially love the emphasis on self-transformation. It's not about escaping the world, it's about changing yourself, becoming a better version of yourself.
And that process of self-transformation, as the Gita shows us, it begins with self-knowledge.
Right. There's a question from the Gita that we didn't really touch on that keeps coming back to me. It asks, what does it mean to truly conquer oneself? I think it's a question worth pondering, maybe even a personal mantra for us to carry with us.
I love that. That's a powerful question to leave with. It invites us to look inward, to examine our motivations, our habits, and to strive for greater self-mastery.
As we're wrapping up here, I keep finding myself drawn back to that battlefield where it all began. It's such a striking image.
It really is. It's almost like a metaphor, isn't it? Our own lives are kind of like battlefields in a way.
Yeah.
Full of challenges and tough choices.
Right. And just like Arjuna, we have to decide how we're going to face those challenges. Are we going to give in to fear and doubt, or are we going to step up and seek guidance?
It's about finding that courage to look for those answers, to strive for something more, something higher.
And you know what else keeps coming back to me? This whole idea of Sanatana Dharma as this universal principle, this code of conduct that goes beyond religion.
That's what makes it so powerful, so relevant. I think it's something everyone can benefit from, whether you're religious or not.
So for someone like me, who's just trying to wrap their head around all this, where do I even begin to apply these principles?
Well, think about your own life, your own struggles.
Yeah.
What are some of the challenges you face every day?
Oh gosh, where do I even start? Work stress, relationships, feeling overwhelmed all the time. You name it.
It sounds like you're juggling a lot. And you know what? The Gita actually offers some really practical tools for dealing with all that chaos. Remember that principle of detachment we talked about?
Vaguely.
Well, think about how you could apply that to your work life. Instead of getting so focused on outcomes like promotions or recognition, what if you shifted your focus to just doing your best, contributing your skills and talents?
So instead of thinking, what's in it for me, it's more like, how can I contribute?
Exactly. And honestly, that shift in perspective can be so freeing. It takes a lot of pressure off.
Yeah.
You know?
I can see that. And what about self-control? That was another big one. Is there any hope for me in that department?
There's always hope. Think of self-control like a muscle. You have to train it. Start with small, achievable goals.
Like what?
Well, it could be something as simple as setting aside dedicated time for work, limiting your social media use, or maybe trying out some mindfulness exercises to help you become more aware of your thoughts and impulses.
So it's about being more intentional with my time and energy, not letting myself get swept away by every distraction that pops up.
Yes, that's the key. And remember, the Gita isn't saying you have to suppress all your desires. It's more about learning to direct them, channel them towards something more meaningful.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. But all this is easier said than done.
Mm-hmm.
What happens when I'm struggling to actually put these principles into practice?
Well, that's where having a teacher or a guide can be so helpful. Remember, we talked about that earlier.
Right, finding a mentor.
Exactly. Someone you trust who can offer you support and guidance. And don't underestimate the power of community, either connecting with like-minded people, others who are also on this journey of self-discovery that can make a huge difference.
It's like that saying, you are the company you keep.
Exactly. Surrounding yourself with people who inspire you can really help you stay on track.
You know, something that really stands out to me from all this is that sadhana dharma isn't just something you believe in, it's something you live so. It's about embodying those principles in your actions.
It's about integrating those principles into your everyday life, making them a part of who you are, how you show up in the world.
So it's less about grand gestures and more about those small, consistent choices we make day in and day out.
Exactly. It's about cultivating those qualities of compassion, kindness, integrity, self-awareness in every interaction, every decision.
I have to say this has been a real eye-opener for me. I'm starting to see how sadhana dharma is less about dogma and more about a way of life, a journey of self-discovery and growth.
It is a journey, and it's a journey that's open to everyone, no matter your background, your beliefs, or your current circumstances. You can choose to embrace these principles and create a more meaningful life for yourself.
This has been such an insightful conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and expertise with us.
It's been my absolute pleasure. I always love exploring these teachings and seeing how they resonate with others.
So as we wrap up here, what's the one key takeaway you hope our listeners walk away with today?
That's a great question. I think if there's one thing I'd want listeners to remember, it's this: Sanatana Dharma is not just some abstract philosophy. It's a living, breathing practice that has the power to transform your life. It's about aligning your actions with your highest understanding, cultivating inner peace, and living in harmony with yourself and the world around you.
Beautifully said. And for our listeners who have been on this journey with us today, remember that question we posed earlier. What does it mean to truly conquer oneself? Let that question be your guide as you explore Sanatana Dharma and see what insights you uncover.
I love that it's such a powerful invitation for self-reflection. And remember, this is just the beginning. The Gita is a text you can come back to again and again, always finding new layers of meaning and wisdom.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling inspired to dust off my copy of the Gita and dive back in. Who knew ancient philosophy could be so relevant to modern life?
It's amazing, isn't it? It speaks to something so deep within us, something that transcends time and circumstance.
Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into Sanatana Dharma. We hope you found it insightful and maybe even a little bit inspiring. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep striving for a life that's aligned with your highest purpose.